He had been invisible for years, pushing a mop through the same hallways, hearing the same whispers, carrying the same quiet dignity. To them, he was just the janitor, someone to laugh at, underestimate, forget. So when a respected black belt singled him out and asked him to spar for fun, it felt less like a challenge and more like a joke at his expense. No one expected resistance. No one expected truth. And no one was prepared for what that moment revealed about power, prejudice, and pride. What happened next didn't just stun the room. It exposed something far deeper. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. He arrived every morning before the building woke up and left long after most people had forgotten he was there. The janitor's name rarely mattered to anyone who passed him in the hallway. To them, he was part of the background, quiet, steady, invisible. He cleaned the same floors, emptied the same bins, and moved with a calm discipline that came from years of routine and self-control. His life was simple, not because it lacked depth, but because it demanded humility. He worked to provide, to stay out of trouble, to keep his head down in a world that had taught him early that standing out could be dangerous. Few people knew anything about his past. They didn't know about the discipline he carried within him, or the long road that had shaped his patience. They only saw his uniform, his mop, and the way he avoided eye contact when laughter followed him down the hall. The martial arts gym inside the building was a different world entirely. Loud, confident, filled with belts that symbolized status and respect. The black belt who trained there was admired, even feared, someone whose skill granted him authority without question. Over time, small glances turned into smirks. Casual remarks followed. The gap between who the janitor truly was and who people assumed him to be grew wider by the day. It was subtle, the kind of tension that never announces itself, but it lingered in the air. And then one afternoon, under the guise of harmless fun, that tension finally surfaced. A simple request was made, one that sounded friendly, almost playful. But beneath it was something else entirely. A test, a message, a moment that would force hidden truths into the open. At first, the request sounded harmless. A light tone, a grin that drew a few quiet laughs from the people nearby. The black belt framed it as a break from routine, a bit of entertainment in an otherwise ordinary afternoon. To everyone watching, it seemed obvious how it would end. The janitor was older, quieter, dressed in worn work clothes that carried the weight of long shifts and little recognition. The black belt stood tall, confident, surrounded by admiration and expectation. The imbalance was clear, and so was the assumption. As the janitor paused, something shifted in the room. Eyes turned toward him, not with respect, but with curiosity sharpened by judgment. This wasn't just about sparring. It was about proving something without ever saying it out loud. The janitor felt it immediately, the familiar pressure of being seen as less, as weak, as a body meant to be tested rather than a person meant to be understood. Years of swallowing insults and staying silent pressed down on him all at once. He tried to decline, keeping his posture calm, his movements measured. But the moment lingered, stretched thin by expectation. The black belt didn't step back. Instead, the encouragement grew louder, more insistent, wrapped in a language of humor. What looked like friendly teasing carried an edge that couldn't be ignored. Backing away now would confirm every assumption already hanging in the air. The room tightened. Phones were subtly lifted. Smiles sharpened. The janitor could feel the heat rising in his chest. Not just fear, but something deeper. Frustration. Memory. A lifetime of moments just like this, where dignity was quietly challenged under the mask of fun. He knew how quickly things could turn. One wrong step, one misunderstood movement, and the story would be written without his voice. As he stepped onto the mat, the noise softened, replaced by anticipation. The black belt circled him slowly, relaxed, almost playful. The crowd expected a quick display of dominance, a lesson delivered for amusement. They didn't notice the way the janitor's breathing changed, steady and controlled. They didn't see the shift in his stance, the quiet precision in how he positioned his feet. To them, he was still just a janitor. The first movement came fast, faster than anyone expected. a blur of motion that forced the black belt to react instead of perform. Murmurs rippled through the room as confidence began to crack. What was supposed to be effortless suddenly required effort. What was supposed to be one-sided began to feel uncertain. The black belt's smile faded. His movement sharpened, no longer playful. This was no longer a joke. The energy in the room changed, curiosity turning into tension. People leaned forward, unsure of what they were witnessing, unsure of which version of the janitor they had never bothered to see. With every exchange, the truth pressed closer to the surface. This wasn't just about skill. It was about the cost of being underestimated, about how quickly respect can vanish when it's built on assumptions instead of understanding. And as the pace intensified, one thing became clear. The moment everyone thought they understood was slipping out of their control. Whatever happened next would leave no room for excuses. The moment shattered all remaining illusions. What had begun as a spectacle now felt dangerous, raw, and uncontrollable. The black belt pressed harder, abandoning form and restraint, driven by disbelief more than skill. Each movement carried frustration, the need to reclaim authority in front of watching eyes. The janitor felt it immediately, the shift from performance to desperation. This was no longer about sport. It was about ego, about pride bruised in public, about a man who could not accept what was unfolding. The pressure intensified. The room seemed to shrink as bodies leaned closer, breath held tight. Every motion echoed with stakes far beyond the mat. The janitor's muscles burned, but his focus sharpened. Years of discipline, of silence, of swallowing disrespect fused into a single moment of clarity. He was no longer reacting. He was responding with control, precision, and restraint that spoke louder than any shout ever could. Then it happened. In a flash that stunned the room into silence, the balance shifted completely. The black belt faltered just for a second, but it was enough. The janitor moved with calm certainty, redirecting force instead of meeting it head-on. The outcome was undeniable. The crowd froze. Disbelief etched across faces that moments earlier had worn smirks. Time seemed to stop. Phones trembled in midair. The air felt heavier, charged with the weight of realization. This was the moment no one had prepared for, the collapse of an assumption so deeply rooted it had never been questioned. The janitor stood steady, breathing controlled, eyes forward. He hadn't shown off. He hadn't humiliated anyone. He had simply revealed the truth. And that truth was uncomfortable, because what had really been exposed wasn't just skill, it was bias. The ease with which a man had been underestimated. The confidence with which a room had decided who deserved respect and who didn't. In that silence, the crowd was forced to confront something far more unsettling than defeat. They were staring at their own reflection. As the weight of the moment settled in, one question lingered unspoken, heavy and unavoidable. Now that the truth was out in the open, what would they do with it? When it was over, the room didn't erupt in applause or laughter. It emptied quietly, as if everyone needed distance from what they had just witnessed. The janitor returned to his routine the same way he always had, steady, composed, unnoticed by most. But something had shifted. The glances were different now. Some avoided him altogether. Others lingered with a discomfort that spoke louder than words. Respect hadn't suddenly appeared, but the illusion of superiority had cracked. For him, the moment wasn't about victory. It never was. It was about survival in a world that constantly tests the worth of people it refuses to truly see. He carried that understanding with him as he pushed his cart down familiar halls, aware that one display of truth doesn't erase a lifetime of bias. Still, there was a quiet strength in knowing he had not bowed to humiliation, nor allowed himself to be defined by someone else's assumptions. What happened that day reached beyond a gym or a single encounter. It mirrored a pattern repeated everywhere, where talent is ignored, dignity is questioned, and humanity is weighed against skin color and status. The shock wasn't that the janitor had skill. The shock was how easily everyone had believed he didn't. That belief is the real injustice, the one that shapes opportunities, interactions, and lives long before any challenge is issued. Stories like this don't end neatly. They linger because they reflect truths many would rather dismiss as isolated or exaggerated. But they aren't. They are reminders of how quickly respect can disappear and how powerful it is when it's reclaimed. The question isn't what the janitor proved that day. The question is why he ever had to prove it at all. And until that question no longer needs asking, stories like this will keep unfolding, waiting for a world brave enough to truly listen.